And hey, let me tell you, man, it was rough. It was rough for a 17-year-old kid. It was a sea of mattresses. They would come in, put the food in the middle of the stacked up trays in the middle of the cell on top of some mats, and we push our mats back. And once they closed that door, man, it was just like on. The strongest survive. If you ate, you ate. If you didn't, you didn't. What you're saying? I can laugh now, but back then I was like, hey, man, I got to get with the program because you lose weight around this camp. So that was really my first experience with adult prison or adult jail. And I didn't learn a damn thing.
Before the video starts, I know you're sick of people asking you to subscribe to their channel, but it would really help me out if you did. Just click the red subscribe button. It's free, no spam emails, and it lets me and my guests know you appreciate what we're doing. Thanks. So you've been doing a lot. You're someone that I actually talk about in my classes, my reentry classes, when I talk about people who have gone on to pursue higher education and work, in advocacy and things like that. You and Doug Smith both, I'm always mentioning you guys. But before all of that,
right?
You had an incarceration experience in your life.
Yeah, I had several. Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, so if you could just tell us a little bit about what life was like that landed you in and out of jail and in and out of prison.
Sure. Well, I grew up here in Houston in the 3rd Ward in the late 70s, early 80s. And so my mother was a school teacher for HISD, and she worked across town. So, I was one of those, I don't know if they still call it a latchkey kid, but I would come home, I had my key, and my mom wouldn't get home for 3 or 4 hours after I got home. So I basically, I throw my books down and I go out and I run the streets. I didn't live in the suburbs, so that's why I say I run the streets. And so in my neighborhood was so diverse that, I lived in a good part of the neighborhood, but I mean, if I ventured up 4 or 5 blocks, I'm liable to see pimps and, drug deals and things of that nature. Again, I grew up in Houston in the 70s and 80s, so it's not like we was in Compton or something like that. But still, anybody that's from Houston knows that, hey, there was always something nefarious going on in 3rd Ward, South Park, places on the north side, things of that nature. So Houston had its spots as well. And so funny thing, though, my mother, when she would come home in the evening times, sometimes, you would just get a sense from her that she was like not trying to have no conversations or anything with you. And she would go straight to her room and, was kind of standoffish and I mean, now I understand, especially with the kind of work that I do. But then I really wasn't getting it that, maybe she was, had some kind of something going on. Maybe she had some kind of mental health issue that probably back then, black folks, we not big on going to the doctor, much less going to a psychologist or, seeking some kind of mental health type of help. And so, I mean, I'm sure that she had some kind of depression. I mean, we've talked about it later in her life and everything. But then, I kind of took it as something I did for some reason like that. So I guess the reason I'm saying all of that is because it was kind of this barrier between me and my mother. And I was the only boy in the family. I had 2 sisters. It was my sisters, my mother, and my grandmother. So I was the only boy in the house. And so it's like, I just did my own thing. And for whatever reason, I guess I felt I wasn't getting the whatever attention or whatever that I thought I deserved. So, I made it a point to give, if my mother said, don't go, over the railroad tracks or something, I'm going over the railroad tracks. I mean, just because she said that. And so we always kind of had that contentious relationship. But I said all of this to say is that, growing up without a father or, a real man figure, my friends that I grew up with was really my, who I learned everything from. So, I mean, You know, they didn't turn out all of that great, but, you know, that's just how it is. And I'm pretty sure that's how it is for other guys around the country that come from these inner city neighborhoods that, you know, mama working all the time, probably got something going on, whether it's a relationship or some kind of trauma that she's trying to process and get over. And we're no help. We just adding more complications and just not knowing that we doing that. But at the same time, you know, you're out there and you're trying to learn how to become a man. And so you see other older fellas out there and whatever they're doing, that's cool, you know. So we went through this stage where stealing cars was cool, and you know, we stole all the cars we could sell until that played out. You know, you can't, you know, there's nowhere to sell this stuff no more. It's gotten so hot. But the thing of it is that it kind of happened at a time when the crack epidemic kind of started. And so we went from stealing cars and making a good money stealing cars, you know, and so now we have this money. And so it seems like that the natural thing to do was to go into drugs because that was the next new thing. Yeah. And it just happened to be, that's just how it was when I was growing up in 79, 80, 81, 82, 83. If you go back and look in the, you know, I guess HPD or something, they'll show you that car thefts was at the all-time high back there. And a lot of guys that got their first time going to the penitentiary, it was the 2 years that they got for stealing that car. You know, I can't tell you how many guys I know the first thing they went to jail for was stealing a car and they got 2 years. You know what I'm saying? But that was just an introduction to the system. And that's how I ended up going to jail. I ended up getting popped in one of those cars, 2 years for that. Thing of it is that I really have to kind of rewind a little bit. I had gotten in trouble as a juvenile and had got put on juvenile probation. And I mean, they even tried to put me, they used to have a place called Chickapin. And they tried to put me into this place, Chickapin, and the guy didn't want me because even back then I had a drug charge. I was just like, hey man, that's, you know, just, hey, that's what's going on out here. I got busted with some weed at school, and the guy said he didn't want me at his facility because people would be buying drugs across the street, some crazy stuff like that. But I was really happy that I didn't have to stay there. And so anyway, I ended up someplace called Hope Center in Houston, downtown. And man, I was 16 on juvenile probation. And right when I was getting ready to turn 17, I got busted carrying a pistol. So I think I was 17 at that point, maybe 2 or 3 days after my birthday. So that was my first adult charge right there. And back in those days, this had to be 1980, 81. I mean, you think conditions are bad in jail now. You should have went to jail in 1980 and 81 because before they had, you know, we have like 5 or 6 different jails downtown now. I can't even begin to remember all of them, 501, 1301. But back then, they just had 1301 and maybe one more or something like that. So they didn't have all the jail space that they have now. And hey, let me tell you, man, it was rough. You know, it was rough for a 17-year-old kid. You know, it was a sea of mattresses. They would come in, put the food in the middle of the stacked up trays in the middle of the cell on top of some mats, and we push our mats back. And once they closed that door, man, it was just like on. You know, the strongest survive. If you ate, you ate. If you didn't, you didn't. You know what you're saying? I can laugh now, but back then I was like, hey, man, I got to get with the program because you'll lose weight around this camp. You know what I'm saying? So that was really my first experience with adult prison or adult jail. And I didn't learn a damn thing, got out of there and hit the street running. You know, and I didn't look back for another 25 years. You know, I'm sure that I didn't, I think the last time I got arrested, I was 41, might have been in 2005. And I was like, man, I've been getting arrested since 1980. You know what I'm saying? I'm kind of tired of this. You know, my grandmother passed away in 2006. And that was really kind of my rock. You know, the person that I most related to in my family. and who I had the closest relationship with, and probably who I hurt the most, because that's what we do. So anyway, God bless her. And anyway, I just kept moving through cycles. I would do well for a little while, and then I would get caught up. Oh, in the process of selling drugs, like they say, don't get high on your own supply. I'm using drugs, because I have access to all of these drugs. And so I'm just steady using drugs. Some of them I like more than I did other ones, you know what I'm saying? But it would impinge on my ability to make good, rational decisions because I'm high. You know what I'm saying? I can't make good decisions. And so, you out there running around the streets of Houston on the north side or the south side or whatever, law's gonna pull you over, and you're just not up to all the question and answer session that you getting ready to get with these laws and stuff. Yeah. So anyway, long story short, man, I just, like they say in AA, I just finally got sick and tired of being sick and tired. I had lost, I'm getting old. I'm 40 years old and I'm in prison. And I had, never really worked nowhere before, never really had a real job, had never gotten married, never owned a house, you know what I'm saying? Had plenty of money, but it just spent it like it was water and there was no tomorrow, and there was really no planning or thinking going into none of it. No more than just having a good time, because it was all about having a good time. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, my last time I was locked up, I made a promise to myself, because I just started thinking about what my grandmother used to tell me all the time. If it is to be, it begins with me. And she used to tell me that all the time. And it all started from me. One day I should give her, she said, help me buy cars. And one of the deals of her helping me buy this car was that I drive her to church on Sunday. She really trying to get me to go to church with her on the cool, but I'd avoid that kind of stuff. But anyway, so I was taking her to church one Sunday, and I had stole some key ring out of somebody's car, and it was just nice key ring, so I put my keys on it. But it had this little fob on it or something like that, and it said, if it is to be, it begins with me. And my grandma said, let me see that. If it is to be, it begins with me. She said, boy, give me that. You don't know nothing about that. I give it back to you when I feel like you understand, And she never did. You know what I'm saying? She never did, because I never really got to that understanding until that day that I was sitting at probably the Estelle unit, in 2007 or something like that. But it came to me that if it is to be, it begins with me. So in other words, hey man, if I'm gonna make a change for myself, if I'm gonna, get out of this cycle that I've been in for the past 25 years, I'm gonna have to do something. I'm going to have to do something. Ain't no counselor, no probation officer, no policeman, no judge, no jury, none of them. I done been in front of all of them over and over and over and over again. Yeah. So if they were going to have any kind of impact on me, and another thing, when I was going through the court system that last time, I was already on federal paper at that time, but I caught a state case. And the dude in the state, kind of like over-prosecuted me. And I'm like, man, I'm a veteran of the system by now, so I know law and everything else. So I'm saying, hey, man, why are you? I'll talk to my attorney. I want to speak to the DA. Finally, he brings the DA back there, and I said, I just need to know, why are you over-prosecuting me? Like, they charged me with a robbery instead of a theft. Apparently, as we were pulling out, we almost hit somebody or something like that. Well, the guy was just telling me, the DA told me, I'm prosecuting you like that because I can. You've been in and out this system for years, and I'm gonna get you off the street. And man, ain't no prosecutor ever talked to me like that. It was like it was something personal between me and him. You know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure my attorney went and told him something that probably didn't make me look all that good, because attorneys feel like, hey, all of a sudden my client is the attorney and I work for him. Well, hell yeah, you do, but they don't see it like that. And I get it. I get it, you know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, you know, that's supposed to be, you know, anyway, I don't want to digress into, you know, how the country has gotten to the point to where some people follow the laws and other people don't. But what I will say is that I got through that situation understanding that if I ever come before these people again, because I got out of there with 11 years, which is kind of messed up because of messed up number and everything. But but I knew that if I ever came in there again, I wasn't going to get out of there like I did this time here. So God has been really good to me, man, because, I mean, man, I got 4-5 felony convictions, a couple of federal convictions. And so it's like, it's just so easy to just, you know, just throw me away easily. Go in anybody's courtroom, they're going to throw me away. So I realized that, you know, that the system is now looking at me like just somebody to take off the street. And so you just have to really, I mean, when you locked up and a lot of times you sitting in cells by yourself, you know, I know anybody listening to this has been in a situation where you just start being introspective and start really, you know, doing some serious soul searching. And it's like, hey, man, if you don't do something, man, you're going to end up in here the rest of your life. And so my grandmother also said, if not now, when? You know, because I used to always tell her, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get myself together and this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, if you ain't going to do it now, when are you going to do it? So, I mean, I took those two things from my grandmother. Basically, you know, if it is to be, it begins with me. And if not now, when? And, man, I have rode them two things all the way to where I'm at now. I mean, my grandmother's little old sayings I used at my college commencement because I gave the commencement speech. And I pepper a lot of my conversation with, you know, truisms and things that she would tell me. And so it's like, I think I finally, if she was alive today, I think she'd give me that little fall, you know? Yeah.
So did you do any educational programming while you were incarcerated in prison? And you said that you got 11 years. So this is early, mid-2000s?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
2005, something like that. So they sent me to the Estelle unit. And the Estelle unit did have college classes at the time. However, as I said, I was already on federal paper. And I didn't really have no whole bunch of commissary money, so I couldn't afford to pay for school. However, Texas, for once, was kind of like ahead of the rest of the country because they were letting people take the college courses, and when you get out, you could pay them back. But if you had any kind of detainer or something like that, you couldn't get into that. You couldn't get your education like that. So
that point, as a matter of fact, since and that was Lee College that was on the Estelle unit, is since I've been involved in the college and prison movement around the country, Texas having the sort of tough on crime, conservative look, but when it comes to education, other states want to know how have y'all been doing that? Because the legislature puts aside money for people to go to school. So that's a really unique thing that we've been doing. Here in Texas.
And even when the Obama administration had kind of made an executive order saying that, you know, you could let people that were in jail start to receive these funds to go to school. I mean, they only picked so many prisons around the country, but Texas participated in that program. So it's just like when it comes to that, I mean, I have to give it to Texas. They do give you those opportunities, you know, so there is that. But no, unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to go to school while I was in prison because of the tainers and things like that, and not having the money.
So then when you got out, you'd made these changes, you took your grandmother's advice to heart and began to see things differently, realized that you needed to make some changes. So you've accomplished a lot since then. What kind of challenges did you face immediately? What we like to call collateral consequences, in reentry.
Yeah, well, first I want to say that what I had intended on, I had a plan when I got out of prison that I wanted to become a chemical dependency counselor, right? Okay. Because I had determined that one of the main reasons why I keep ending up in jail is because I've never addressed my substance abuse problem. Right. And many people would say I never addressed my mental health problems either. but I wanted to, and I wanted to address that. And so while I was in there, I was going to AA, and also they had a faith-based program too. Golly, I can't remember. It slips my mind right now. But when I was at Estelle and Pulaski, I was in some faith-based substance use program. So I really just threw myself into that. And then when I got out, the reason I said that is because, we make plans and God laughs. I start getting my own sayings. Now, that's not my grandmother's saying, that's mine. But yeah, when we make plans, God laughs, because I was just so intent on becoming a chemical dependency counselor. So anyway, I got out, and I said I was in federal custody when I got released back onto the street. So they sent me to this transitional center in San Antonio. Well, I got a job at Goodwill, and actually got into I had when I was in federal prison, they have computers there. You can send emails and stuff out. And so I sent out an email, and I found out that the email address to the guy who was over the human services department at San Antonio Community College. This it's Mr. Edwin Bergen, Dr. Edwin Bergen. And so Dr. Bergen wrote me back while I was at the federal penitentiary in Beaumont. And he said, because I was asking him, I have this criminal record and everything. Do you think I could become a LCDC, a licensed chemical dependency counselor? And if so, do you think I would be able to get into San Antonio Community College? So he wrote me back, emailed me back and said, hey, yeah, man, we have people in our program that have, have criminal histories. And that's what they called it then. Of course, we call it justice involvement now. But anyway, and he was saying, if you came here and as long as you could pass, as long as you qualify to get in here, sure, we'll take you. And yeah. And so that gave me some hope. Yeah. And so that's the biggest thing that you need is hope, but you also need some direction. So that kind of gave me direction too. And I just acted on that. I put some action behind it instead of just saying, I want to go back to school. I had somebody that said, yeah, you can go to school here. Went up there. Now, was it as easy as he said? Hell no. It wasn't. But I just didn't give up. I mean, I was in this place. If anybody knows anything about these federal halfway houses, man, you got to fill out this sheet the day before and turn it into your counselor, and she got to approve it for whatever you do the next day. Mm. So everything you do is kind of like on the next day. You know what I'm saying? And you have to have like the person you're going to go see and their phone number. Well, I'm telling my counselor, who, used to ride a broom to work. You know what I'm saying? So she was difficult to say the least. But I told her that I was trying to get into to the community college, and I said I was going to the admissions office. She said, well, dude, what's the phone number? And who you going to go see at the admission? Well, I don't know. Yeah. I have to actually go there, and then I'm sure that they'll assign someone. So I didn't even know what the process was. Yeah. Well, they have eventually let me go. And once I got there, I had to call them and tell them that I was there, and all of that stuff. But long story short, I was able to get into community college. And that was just the beginning. From there, I tell everybody it was God and people. God brought me to that point, but it was the people that helped me. Dr. Bergen, the first person, gave me hope, said, yeah, you could come here. And then it's hard. Some of the collateral consequences that we face is housing. So I had a hard time finding housing. However, God is good. Because I got led to this place called Pay It Forward Ministries over at this place called, I want to say it's not Hope Center, but they have some place in San Antonio that, they have a treatment center there. They have all kind of resources. It's like a hub. It's called Haven for Hope. Okay. Haven for Hope. And so they sent me to Haven for Hope. I went over there, and the guy told me about it in an AA meeting. So there you go, people. Mm-hmm. I'm just talking, hey, man, I got to find a place to stay, blah, blah, blah. Oh, if you go over to Haven for Hope, they'll give you a scholarship and pay for the first couple of weeks you're there. So I went over there and I talked to the dude, and he was like, I'm like telling them, hey man, I got all of this parole stuff for Texas, and they want me to have a ankle monitor and all that. I got to have this machine in the room, and I just don't know how it's gonna get done, and this, that, and the other. And the guy told me, he said, hey man, Reginald, it's gonna work out just the way God wants it to. And I gotta admit to you, man, when that guy told me that, I was like, man, you could say that. That's not helpful. That's not helpful. But as time went on, I came to see that exactly what he said manifested itself in my life. So anyway, the guy he said, you know what? It just so happens that I'm opening up a sober house with a business partner of mine today, and today is the first day that we're taking applications. So if you can be at that house at 6 o'clock. Now remember, I told you. You can't do nothing unless you write it down on the paper the day before. So I called my counselor, and she hadn't taken off on her broom yet. So I explained to her, hey, she knows that I got to get a place to stay. And so because of that, and I told her this is a place, but as soon as you get there, make sure you have someone call the front desk. And so I did all of that. Long story short, I was the first person that they accepted to live in that sober house. And it's the clubhouse in Monticello Park in San Antonio. It's still open now. So anyway, I ended up living there and hopped on the Fredericksburg bus and go right on down to San Antonio College. It just couldn't get no better than that. God gave me a place to stay, put me in school. Of course, I got financial aid. There's a lot of misconceptions and bad information out there about getting federal financial aid. As long as you wasn't getting federal financial aid, or when you got busted with drugs, you good. You know what I'm saying? So if you was in school, but you was still slanging, Yeah. But anyway, I got financial aid. I got some other stuff, got some scholarships. After I lived in the sober house for a while, the guy who was the manager had gotten into some legal trouble and ended up going back to jail. So the guy that owned the house came to me and said, hey, man, you're in school to be a substance abuse counselor. You've been here 6 months. You go to school, you come home, you go study, you do what you're supposed to do. Would you consider being the manager of the house? Now, that's great, because if you're the manager of the sober house, you ain't got to pay rent.
Yeah.
But so that's what I was thrilled about was, oh man, I ain't got to pay rent, because what I was doing was the guy knew I was in school. So he would wait until the beginning of the semester. And when the beginning of the semester came and I got my school check, I just pay him off for the previous 3 months or something like that. And the first time I asked him to do that, he was. But by that time, I was already getting ready to be the manager of the house, I guess. But at first, he had to kind of like go out on a limb and trust me, because he told me, Reginald, that never works out. People never pay you back. And so I made it a point to pay him back. And like right after I paid him back that first semester, man, he must have walked around every time he seen me. He just smile and look at me. And I'd be like, why you looking at me like that? He said, man, ain't nobody ever paid me back. And so sure enough, the guy ended up going back to jail. And so anyway, this gentleman, he came and he said, hey, I have trust for you. Would you run the house? So I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. So I'm thinking, okay, now I don't have to pay rent. That's great and everything like that. But the biggest thing that was just a small thing, being able to have a place to stay and not pay rent. That took a lot of load off of my shoulders financially, and a lot of stress off of me and everything. Not having to get that credit extended to me every time. But the thing that I really learned from being the manager of that house is when you're in a sober house and you're the manager, everybody's looking at, because you're making them follow rules.
Yeah.
Because we had a board up here, side in and side out. So every rule in that house, you better best believe that I better follow it.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, they're going to be like, well, wait a minute. When you came in last night and you didn't do that, and your chore was to do this, that, or the other, and you ain't been doing it. And so what being the manager of the house did for me was it opened my eyes up to the fact that I'm going to have to lead these guys. And the only way I can lead them is through example. I'm gonna have to model the behavior that I want them to give me, to give, the same thing that I want them to do the same thing I'm doing,
Yeah.
And I mean, but that was an epiphany for me. And it's also a huge responsibility because you always on Front Street, but you just do what you're supposed to do, and you try to be fair. And, if you're wrong, you try to say, you know what, I was wrong. And you just try to be the kind of leader that you would hope somebody would be if they was leading you. And you do that long enough, it becomes a part of you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so this is like, I never planned to be the manager of a sober house. But being the manager of the sober house taught me how to lead folks.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You know what I'm saying? Somebody should write a book about it or something like that. But anyway, so, I mean, that responsibility and learning how to lead coupled with, going to school and starting to expand my network of people. Because the first thing you got to understand about school, and I really didn't understand this until I got to a big school like UT, is that school is not about, it's about books and grades and everything, but what it's really about is the experience, about being exposed to people and culture, and it's just the experiences that you have and the relationships that you make while you're in college that really help set you up for the next level or for whatever you're going to do next. And so my experience in San Antonio and with San Antonio Community College, they gave me support. The teachers there, they gave me support. I had an English teacher, and he saw something in me. He was like, "Hey, man, all the younger guys, because I'm in my 40s. Everybody in the class 17, 18, 19, 20. I'm in community college, so they're young."
Yeah.
But I'm just in there, just being me, because I'm like, at this point, I don't care. I'm not trying to impress nobody on this campus.
Yeah.
And so, the first thing I noticed about being in school, especially with young people, is that when the teacher asks a question, they're not gonna answer nothing. I mean, it's just crickets. And so I'm just like, hey, I know that. I'll put my hand up, and even when I don't know the answer, I'll put my hand up because I just be running my mouth. And so at the end of the class, I tell my instructor, I say, man, I'm sorry for just monopolizing the conversation and taking it. He was like, no, indeed, I'm happy that you in here. You know what I'm saying? Somebody's talking. Well, hell, you didn't have to tell me that but one time. So now I'm just, and I'm just like that all the way through school. All the way. I mean, even when I went to graduate school and, I just always been like that. So, I mean, I'm just fortunate in that way. I didn't plan none of that stuff,
So you did accomplish the LCDC and then you went on to the bachelor?
No.
What was that trajectory
Okay.
like?
I was ending the end of that program, that LCDC program, and had just applied for my LCDCI, which is your intern, and so you could start getting your hours and things like that. So one day, the guy that owned the sober house I worked at called me up. He said, hey, I want you to meet this friend of mine. And I'm like, okay. He said, it was at some taco place downtown in San Antonio. Come meet my friend Jaime. So I get down there and he introduces me to Jaime Loria, who was like he was like a representative for Origins. Origins is like a big time recovery place down in South Padre Island. It's kind of like Malibu. Something like that. High dollar folks. Anyway, the guy that owned the sober house, he had went there. That's where he went to for his recovery treatment. So anyway, I got to talking to Jaime Loria, and he's like, man, I heard a lot about you and everything. And, I was just wanting to know what you can do. Have you ever considered being a social worker? I looked at that guy and I was like, oh, man, I tell you, man, I make social workers quit their job. I mean, to me, a social worker is like a probation officer almost. It's like, no, I don't want to be no damn social worker. And so anyway, the dude says, hey, man, LCDCs are great. We need good LCDCs. He said the thing about it is that if you become an LCDC or when you become an LCDC, that's all you're going to be able to do is be an LCDC, which half of that job is really log in 15-minute intervals. So you can, you know what I'm saying? No offense against anybody that's an LCDC, but I ain't lying. But anyway, so he was like saying, hey, man, have you considered the University of Texas? And I was like, man, I considered Harvard and Stanford too. Yeah. And so ironically, I had while I was at San Antonio College, they had a human services program at Texas Tech, and they have one of the oldest, what we call now, what they call it, Centers for Students in Recovery, like they have at UT now. Well, before UT ever had one, Texas Tech up in Lubbock, they pioneered that 25 years ago. And they have a whole program. And so anyway, because they knew Dr. Bergen and everything, I went up there. Long story short, I had got accepted to that program. But in the interim, I met Jaime Laria. And Jaime was like, have you considered UT? And like I say, I was like, and no, but I considered Harvard and Stanford, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, he said, hey, man, I think that you make a great social worker. And I'm like, this dude's crazy. But anyway, he said, hey, it don't cost nothing to fill out the application, if you need any help. And so anyway, I filled out the application. So man, I forgot all about that. I'm going to Texas Tech. I'm like, Lord, I'm not going to be able to come down and visit my people too much because it's a long ass ride. And so anyway, I just happened to look at my email one day. I was over at my sister's house, and I was like, damn, they let anybody in this school because I got an email from UT saying, congratulations, you've been accepted. And I was like, damn. I mean, I seriously was like, everybody was like, hey, no, you can't get into UT, man. You crazy. Yeah. You might as well have tried to get into Stanford or Harvard or something like that. And I'm saying, this is a state school, buddy. But anyway, I got in, and my niece was like, oh, Uncle Reggie, you got the UT. And I said, I ain't going to UT. And my sister came in the room. She said, what's all the commotion about? And my niece explained to her that I just got my acceptance email from UT. And I was telling Angela, I was like, I'm not going there, man. I don't think I can. But what it really was is I didn't think I could compete academically on that level. That's what the real thing was. Yeah. But then I was like, man, I don't want to be around all them people. People don't look like me, which was everybody because I'm 43 or 44 years old at that time. And so everybody thinking I'm a teacher walking around there. I don't have no kind of degree. So, because I left San Antonio Community College when I got into UT. And I did get with LCDC, you have to take 10 courses to get licensed. And it doesn't matter if you got a PhD or if you got an associate degree. If you don't have them 10 courses, you got to take them 10 courses. Yeah. And so this is a certificate program. So you get that certificate, you couple it with whatever your degree is. So like now, I don't even have to do none of all I got to do is take the test. I can be an LCDC. I don't have to do none of the, time that you have to do before you can, actually get your license. But so then that's what I took away from San Antonio College was the certificate. So if I did want to become an LCDC, I could, once I got my bachelor's degree. You have to couple it with some kind of degree. So whether it's an associate or whatever. So anyway, I went to started school at UT. And what really helped me get through that, especially initially, was that they had a Center for Students in Recovery. And I was in recovery. And so at least at the Center for Students in Recovery, it was like I had something in common with the other people was there. Yeah. Because other than that, I'm just some dude that I really didn't have nothing in common. I could sit in the class with you and tell you about stuff that would make you'd have to leave class. You know what I'm saying? And I'd just be like, what's wrong with him? You know what I'm saying? So anyway, it was real colorful going to social work school at UT because there was like two guys in my whole cohort, and there was like 3 black people in the whole cohort, and none of them hadn't been in the penitentiary. You know what I'm saying? But it was an opportunity for me too. It's like I understood when I went to UT that it wasn't just about me. And that's what my sister ended up telling me. When I told her I wasn't going to go, my sister said, Reginald, listen, how many people in your situation come from where you come from, get an opportunity to go to that school? And I was like, hell, I don't know, and I don't care. You know what I'm saying? But she was like, no, well, you should. She said, sometimes in life, things are bigger than you, you know? And so, you know, if mommy was here, our grandmother, she would tell you, to make sure, she would always tell us to make sure that you're ready when an opportunity presents itself, because you don't know when it's going to come around again. So Angela said a variation of that.
Yeah.
You know, you need to seize this opportunity because it may not come around again. So, you know, when you get to weighing things, it's kind of easy. You know, there's Lubbock, Austin. Lubbock, Austin. So Austin wins, and, you know, they got mad and all of that. They were disappointed that I didn't go to school there, to say the least. But, you know, that's just how God works. We make plans and God laughs. I didn't plan none of that. You know, I'm not, but it's good to have a plan, because it was a piece of my plan that got me to where I ultimately wanted to be. Yeah. But the thing of it is I didn't know I wanted to be there. Yeah. I'll say, if that makes sense, right? So anyway, got to UT, got to really working with the Center for Students in Recovery. Also, my teachers embraced me. I had one teacher, Miss Michelle Reentry. She was a black teacher at the social work school. And it wasn't even about white or black, man. It's like everybody at that social work school kind of embraced me, you know, and she really kind of helped me, because I had a severe case of imposter syndrome. I'm like, what in the hell am I doing here? And I'd sit in some of the classes and I'd be, this is the silliest stuff. I mean, my whole freshman year at UT, I was just doing a critical analysis of this, why this ain't about nothing. You know what I'm saying? They're wasting your people's money, you know, and I still kind of think that. But anyway, but then after I started getting comfortable and started to know the instructors and started to know the other people in my cohort. And then, you know, that was also at a time when I was doing a lot of advocacy work. And I mean, one day, the guy from the newspaper called me up and said, I want to do an interview. I need to, can I meet with you, you know, in like the next hour or two? You know, these TV stations, they'll be on a deadline. And so some kind of way he got my number, and I'm like, you want to talk to me? I'm like, yeah, come on, you know, but where are you? Well, I'm at the UT. And where at the UT? I'm at the social work school. And so I told him where it was at. He came and met me. And so now I'm out on the steps in front of the social work school. I got this camera and I'm just talking and, you know, I'm doing my thing and flossing and going on. And the students was coming out and they were like, who the hell is this dude right here, man? This dude is a trip. Have you ever been in class with this dude? You know what I'm saying? So it was like everybody at the school, at least I felt this way. Again, they really supported me. And so that's why I always say God and people, man, because we need that support. And Dr. Roundtree used to always tell me, you know, Reginald, you're here because you belong here. Because I was like, I don't know why the hell I'm here. Maybe they had some kind of quota. They had to let one person from the penitentiary in here. You know, now I've learned over time that they had some more of us sprinkled out there at UT. And at that time, I also started learning that there was a bigger movement going on. And I had brothers and sisters at Yale that had just as involvement, you know, at teaching at the University of Washington, you know, people like yourself. So, I mean, there was a lot of folks out there. I just came out of prison at the time when it was, you know, shortly before or after, I can't remember, Michelle Alexander's book came out. And it seemed like that started a domino effect. And all of a sudden, people wanted to hear what we had to say.
Yep, that is exactly how I understand it. Her book hit in 2010. And then, like, Reentry became a thing with Obama in, like, 08, 09, 2010. And then just Reentry, formerly incarcerated folks.
And it's like everybody just tries to get in where they fit in because there's a lot of money to be made in that. And so it's like all of a sudden, you know, for years and years and years, believe it or not, there was always a lot of money in this. There's a lot of money in prisons, but there's also a lot of money in community corrections. And, you know, and all these programs that's out here that support people that are in reentry. But it was just basically social workers or, you know, probation people or people that used to work for the state. Now they're not at the state no more. So now they're going to start a reentry program. I'm not going to mention no names, but they got a prison named after one lady, and she got out and started one of the biggest reentry programs in Dallas. You know, and I'm like, how that happened right there, you know what I'm saying? But it was because money was involved. And so anyway,
Yeah. So in that, you did eventually go on to pursue further education, graduate school.
Right. Because of the support that I got, from people in the community. I also failed to mention that we were talking about the collateral consequences. Finding a place to stay followed me from San Antonio to Austin, and I had a hard time finding a place there. Of course, I automatically went to a sober home, and it didn't take long before I ended up being the manager at that sober home. However, I graduated, as I said. I even in my cohort chose me to give the commencement speech for our graduation. So I was like, when I first went to go to school here, I didn't think I was going to be able to make the grade. You know what I'm saying? And everybody was talking about going to graduate school after that, and I was just glad that I had graduated this. And they were talking about starting school all over again. I was like, no. However, I also learned guarding people. I had a sponsor at that time who told me, he said, hey, man, once you graduate, I know that you don't want to go right back to school or anything. He said, but I'm going to tell you, what you need to do is go take your GRE as soon as you get finished, as soon as you get your undergraduate degree, go on and take that GRE so you'll get that out the way.
Yeah.
And I did that. And I'm going to tell you about that. So the guy who was like over recruiting for the social work school, Ramon, I went to him and I said, hey, man, I applied for graduate school. Everybody already knew that I was going to do that, you know what I'm saying? All I had to do, Ramon told me, hey, man, you're going to get in graduate school, man. You got great grades. You've been great since you're here. But you need to get a GRE score of a certain amount.
Yeah.
And if you get that certain amount, you're going to get in. So I was fortunate because I was able to get into the summer program in this something called the, what's his name? McNair, the guy who was the astronaut. Mm-hmm. They have McNair scholars, right? And so the McNair Scholar Program prepares people for graduate school. And they had a summer program where we got to simulate tests, GRE tests, and got to study, stuff and learn how to take the test, learn how to think the test. And that's why we don't make good grades on tests, because nobody ever really taught us how to take the test, But once you learn how to take the test, when you go take it, it kind of like you don't have that fear because you kind of know what's coming at you. Yeah. At least that's how they explained it to me. You know what I'm saying? But it worked. So I had to get a certain score. So when I got ready to go in there, I was walking up in there, and it was like I was walking to go in the courtroom or something like that. And they about to give me 120 months or something like that. And so I'm saying to God, I'm saying, God, listen, you brought me this far, and we've been through a whole lot. I didn't think I was going to be able to do a whole bunch of stuff. So at this point, I done stopped asking. I don't question stuff no more. I done seen too much stuff happen, and so, but I say, listen, if you want me to go to graduate school, you're going to have to help me get this grade. So I took the test. I'm on a computer. You got to put all your stuff into a locker. You can't have nothing. I mean, they watching you. They serious about this stuff, So I take the test. I go through the whole test. And at the end of those tests, they'll give you your preliminary score. But what you think my preliminary score was?
I don't even know what the range is.
Well, the guy told me I had to have like a 120. I don't know the exact number. That's why I don't want to quote it. But he said you need this exact score.
Yeah.
At the very least, it's the base score.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I got. Yeah. That base score. And I just said to God, I said, well, you must be trying to tell me something.
Yeah.
Must be trying to tell me something. I didn't get one more point. I didn't get one less point. I got exactly what Ramon, man, if you just get this score right here. I was like, oh, God, boy, you'd be working overtime. So anyway, I went to graduate school. And that was the first graduate school I went to. So I went to that graduate school to get a master's in social work. It was great. I got to intern at an institute. And just so happened, you never know how stuff that you do in school is going to impact you career-wise.
Yeah.
Because just so happened the job I have right now, I mean, once they got past the point of my felony convictions and stuff, because even universities still kind of be looking at you all crazy and stuff, but we a little bit still in vogue now, so we can get in these places. But anyway, after they had looked at that, I guess the next thing was they looked at my CV, looked at the different things I had been involved in, and basically your resume. But of course, you know this. So anyway, but they saw in there that I had been at that institute. It's called IRUPRA, the Urban Institute of Urban Research Policy, or so. I don't even remember what the acronym stands for. But when I was in graduate school, that's where I was placed over there.
Yeah.
Because it was really, to be honest with you, because it was hard to place me anywhere else. Because like some places wouldn't even take me because of my criminal history, even though I had graduated and I was in graduate school. As we were just saying, these collateral consequences, they follow us. However, because I was at that institute, the person that's over the institute I'm at right now was like, hey, I've known about that's a great institute. Hey, that just kind of like, well, then of course you can come work over here with us. It helped because she went to UT for law school. So she was familiar, and she was like, you got good grades too. And also in graduate school, you kind of, you start to kind of develop your own, well, what we call it social pedagogy, but you start to develop your own kind of like, this is what I'm into here. You know what I'm saying? This is my side of the social work street. I mean, of course you do that before you go to graduate school because you can go clinical or you can go admin or something like that. So anyway, I started determining that, I wrote my capstone on, taking public buildings that like the city owned and turning them back over to the community, like letting nonprofits move in them or something like that. Because at the time, and still to this day, Austin had a lot of buildings that were just empty. But there was no movement on it. The city would own them, but they wouldn't do anything to them because, they had such a big building boom and stuff like that. So who knows why they were holding on to this, that, and the other. But right now in Austin, they're getting ready to do a project on Runberg. That's a big Home Depot that's just been destitute and desolate for years and years and years, and no one ever did anything with it. So hopefully they're going to remodel it. They're going to put some space for the community, like a park space, but also have places for nonprofits and things of that nature. So that's a couple of years down the line. But I'm saying all of that because I know the seeds of that type of advocacy work came from graduate school. And also in graduate school, you're always working in groups in different classes. And sometimes they're like, okay, we need to have a project. And so I was in one class and we needed a project. And I said, well, I've been working on this curriculum for people that's in reentry. And everybody was like, well, that's really cool. Reentry is cool. And you're Reggie and you're cool. So we want to do the reentry thing. And so that's how SWAG, skills, wellness, advocacy, and goals. That's why I started working on SWAG. And so I got that out of that graduate school. So when I got out of graduate school, of course, I started working. And I started working before I went to graduate school. Though when I first graduated, I got a fellowship with the Hogg Foundation of Mental Health to be a peer policy fellow. And so this was my first exposure. I went from advocacy to actually learning how to do policy work. And so they train you in policy. They put you with a nonprofit, and you basically are doing the work that I'm doing now at ECI. You're working with stakeholders. You're bringing together groups so you can collaborate. You're trying to formulate the way that you're going to address this issue so everybody is saying the same thing. So I learned a whole lot. And then I went to graduate school, and when I went to graduate school, I got a job with TCJC. I worked as soon as I got out of, before I even graduated undergrad, I got a job, and I've worked ever since. So I've been to graduate school twice, and each time I had a full-time job. So I was working full-time at TCJC, going to graduate school at night.
Texas Criminal Justice
Coalition. Now, I went from that Hogg Fellowship. I did well, and I guess I kind of like showed that I could do the work. And so I just got recruited. I mean, that's just how it is. They come to me one day and said, hey, want to talk with you, what you considered what you're going to do when you leave this fellowship, because the fellowship was for 2 years. And I'm like, I'm going to try to find me a job. Well, we want to offer you a job. I was like, check that out. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it's all right, you're making a little money and everything, and so you feel like you're doing, you cleaned your act up, you're doing all right, you know what I'm saying? I have to admit that a lot of my friends were like, man, why are you going to school like this? You know, because I understand though, because we all came from, if it don't make no money, it don't make no sense. You know, and this wasn't about money.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It had nothing to do with money. So at least I didn't think it was. And like once you get out and start, you know, starting nonprofits and all that, you'll learn a whole something different. But anyway, at that point, it wasn't really all about money and politics and stuff, other than I was just trying to learn how to advocate for whatever issue it was. And I got a chance to really focus on reentry in Texas. And so I worked with TCJC for a couple of years through a legislative session. And then I went to work for the state of Texas as a subject matter expert, as a senior advisor for the Health and Human Services Commission. So that was just taking it to a whole nother level. Yeah. Now I used to, you know, go into the state capitol, and I would go to a hearing, and I would give a testimony on a particular bill that we have been proposing to get HHSC to do something. Once I went to work for HHSC, I'm neutral on all issues, and I'm just providing what's called a subject matter expert. You know, yeah. I'm just giving them, you know, the perspective of someone that this is my field, right? So it was kind of weird. We're talking about 3 different legislative sessions. The first one, the 85th, I was a Hogg Fellow. The 86th, I was at TCJC, at Texas Criminal Justice Coalition. At the 87th, I was working for the state. So at each one of these intervals, I was learning something new about the system. Yeah. You know, so I tried to get as much as I could out of that, out of those opportunities. And so the next thing I did was I had been working for the state for a couple of years, and I had started a nonprofit before I even started working there. And my nonprofit, Build and Promise USA, 3 years into its growth, the city of Austin awarded us $200,000 for 3 years for a total of $600,000. And so we went from a nonprofit that the most we had ever gotten was like $60,000, you know, before at one time, to getting this large amount of money. And so I knew I wasn't going to be able to stay at the state and work closely with this no more, because I had too much overlap. It would have been, you know, it might not have been unethical, but it might have looked unethical. And that's just as bad as it being unethical. So anyway, I left there and went to TSU because the EC, working at ECI would allow me the latitude that I need. It's the Earl Carl Institute. Earl Carl Institute. And Earl Carl was quite a guy. He was blind and went to law school and taught law. And yeah, he was. I didn't have no idea who he was, but I'm proud to work at ECI because I mean, this guy here, man, he pulled himself up, you know, out of all kinds of big black. You know what I'm saying? He's blind. And I just had to take my hat off to that brother, you know. Yeah. So it's great working for an institute named after Earl Carl. But
so what's your role there now?
Is a policy and community liaison. So, you know, we have a issue that needs to be discussed at the city hall or at the commissioner's court or even at the state capitol. Then I would go and I would give testimony in for the Earl Carl Institute on whatever the issue might be. But also I go out and if it wasn't COVID, I would be doing a lot more of this. But, you know, you have to stay engaged with your stakeholders. A lot of the work that we do work at Earl Carl that we have the Innocent Project. So we help folks that are in jail or that have been in jail that, you know, feel like their convictions was illegal. We help them. And we also have folks that are getting evicted. We have a group of lawyers that work strictly on evictions. We have another group of lawyers that does some juvenile justice stuff. And so whenever something that we're working on in one of those areas, it comes to someone needs to go down to City Hall or something like that, generally me. Okay. So It's just and being able to like stay on top. Like we had a staff meeting today, and in our staff meetings, each different group, like we have the criminal justice group that does the innocent projects. We have the juvenile justice group that does juvenile work. Have another group that does housing. They each report out so we can all stay abreast of what everybody else is doing. And I particularly need to do that because sometimes when I listen to that, I know overlaps, or I know something that's going on in the community that might work well with that or something like that. So it allows me to use all my abilities because, over the years, I've grown good at building networks of people, building relationships with people. So, I know folks in Austin, I know folks in Houston, I know folks in Dallas, San Antonio. I've been in a lot of these systems and stuff. And so it's easier for me, I think, to reach out and get the people, the exact person that they need to talk to. And you work in this field, man. There's a lot of us out here that have justice involvement, and we're doing all kinds of different stuff. But the only people that really keep up with it is us.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We keep up with it, but the people we work for, they depend on us.
So you went from being a teenage car thief in Houston in the late 70s, early 80s, in and out of jail and in prison for 30 years, almost 30 years until you finally took your grandma's advice.
Yes.
Went through the process of the LCDC and then social work out of nowhere, and then grad school and the Hogg Foundation, Texas Criminal Justice Coalition. Like you have this long roster.
Oh, we didn't even talk about. I got an MBA as well from Houston Tillerson. I went back because I realized that a social worker also needed to have that MBA because when we start organizations, if we don't have a good understanding of money and of how to read financial documents, folks don't have the confidence in us to give us that money. So I'm just saying, sometimes them letters behind your name, that's what you need to have. And so I needed that MBA. And so I was lucky to get into that program. And so I got my MBA as well. So I have an MSSW for social work and I have an MBA.
Yeah, I'm in a similar spot, even though I've gone through a master's degree and a doctorate degree. I don't have any background in business and it's really hurting me.
Right. Business, getting your MBA is great. Any of the people that y'all like business out there, hey man, that MBA takes business to a whole nother level. Yeah. Things that you would have never thought about had to do with business. And it's reading the cases that you get in business to kind of to work through. It's a great experience. So I would encourage you to do that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what are some final words, or where are you going with all this? What's next for you?
Right. Well, right now, I have swag. It's in the Travis County Correctional Complex right there. So folks are taking my skills, wellness, advocacy, and goals class in Austin. And at the end of that curriculum, they prepare what's called a PREP, a personal reentry plan. And so, now that my nonprofit in Austin has been made the Reentry hub, they'll take their PREP, then they'll go to Building Promise out in the community, and someone at Building Promise will get with them and they'll review their PREP, and then we'll start helping them make those connections so they can put that plan into action, because a plan is only as good as the action that you back it up with. You know what I'm saying? We can have a plan all day long, but if we don't take that first step, then we haven't gone anywhere. Yeah. And so I'm really looking to work more with Building Promise and swag. And next I'm going to be doing a strengths, wellness, advocacy, and goals curriculum for the young folks in the Harris County Juvenile Detention Center. And what we're going to be using, instead of using a peer support type of approach, we're going to be using a credible messenger. So I guess to answer your question, I've gotten into this curriculum writing. I have a nonprofit here. My sister has a nonprofit here in Houston that she works with young people with justice involvement. I have a nonprofit up in Austin, Building Promise, where I work with adults with justice involvement. So we got the whole thing covered right there. And so now I'm writing curriculums and developing programs because people need support when they get out. Yeah. And I feel like the best programs, don't let nobody tell you no different. People that's closest to the problem are closest to the solution, and so, oftentimes we don't have the resources. And so I've been blessed to have access to education, have access to resources now that, the city is supporting us in this way. And so it's like it's incumbent upon me to do the best job that I can do, as being, having domain over this stuff. I got a duty because people are going to come after me. And if I don't do a good job, if I don't do a good job handling folks' money and doing what I say I'm going to do, then the next man that comes behind me, they're going to be like, no, man, we messed with y'all justice involved guys before. Yeah. We don't give but one chance, you know what I'm saying? We'll give other people many, many chances. But when it comes to us, hey, man, we could do good. My grandmother would say, and I'm going to end with another one of my grandmother's quotes, you can do 100 things right. People only remember the one thing that you did wrong.
Yep.
That's all I got to say. That's all I got to say.
Well, thanks so much for coming out here.
All right. Yeah.